Everyone remembered the year that winter came and refused to leave. The snow fell steadily the world over. Each day the people of the earth awoke not to the slush and puddles of spring, but to a crisp new layer of sparkling white. Gardens were lined with entire families of snowmen. A network of skate marks patterned every frozen lake, and as March turned to April and April to May, it never stopped, never ceased for even a day. It was the coldest and longest winter anyone could remember. Snow was hurled in all directions as the chopper cautiously began its descent, battered by winds and fighting the frost that was constantly trying to work its way into the electrics. All around the platform, the unit soldiers stood waiting, and as the door of the copter slid open, they snapped into salute. A soldier approached the aircraft and saluted. "Brigadier, sir, good to see you made it here in one piece," he said quickly. Brigadier Stewart removed his hat and swiftly tucked it under his shoulder. "Well, it's not for lack of trying on the part of this weather, I can tell you that much. At ease, Captain," Stewart inquired. "Carson, sir. Howard Carson," the captain replied. "Well, Captain Carson, shall we step inside before your garrison's boots become firmly frozen to the ground?" The brigadier walked towards the bunker, and the captain dismissed his men, rushing to catch up to his guest. "We sent out the call to London as soon as the device was discovered, sir," Carson reported. "All attempts to study or analyze it have failed. It's got our best and brightest confounded." "Of course it has, Captain. That's why I'm here and not on the end of the phone," Stewart replied sarcastically, as they walked down the corridors, lined at almost every corner with a pair of unit soldiers. "Who else knows about this?" "No one, sir. Your instructions were very clear." "And the analysts you've had studying this thing, what do they have to report? There must be something they can tell me," the brigadier inquired as they reached the large iron bulkhead. Carson tapped his security clearance into the keyboard on the wall. "With all due respect, sir, I think it's best you see it for yourself." The door slid open slowly, and the pair entered the room. All around them, the hydraulics of the power station were frozen solid, vast vats of coolant reduced to bricks of ice, and a steady mist hung in the air. At the center of the room was a console, heavily modified with wires jutting out from all sides to curious power cells positioned carefully around it. All over, colorful lights blinked on and off. At the head of the console was a large dome contained within a sphere of glass, static coursing through it, and all around there was a faint energy field, barely visible to the naked eye. "Well, that's impressive, I must say." The brigadier stepped closer and leaned in. "It's definitely alien." "Beyond any doubt, sir," Carson replied. "We've taken visual samples of the metal in the casing. It doesn't even exist on this planet, or any known occupied worlds in our sector of space." "Visual samples?" The brigadier turned from the machine. "You mean to tell me you've been here 2 months and all you've done is look at this thing?" "With respect, sir, all other attempts to observe the console have met with the same results." He reached for his communicator. "Send him in." The bulkhead slid open and a tall man in a long white coat entered, clipboard and pen ready in hand. "Right then, what do we have here?" the man asked, walking towards the console and beginning to jot notes on his clipboard. The brigadier was beginning to grow impatient. "Captain, I really don't see the point in," he started to say, as the scientist stepped inside of the energy field and vanished. Stewart's eyebrow slowly rose up his forehead. "I say, where's he gone?" Carson struggled to contain a quiet smirk. "Just a moment, sir," he replied. Mere moments later, the bulkhead door slid open once more, and the very same scientist in the very same white coat walked in, clutching the very same clipboard and pen. "Right then, what do we have here?" he asked once more, walking past the stunned and silent brigadier towards the console, glancing down at his clipboard and jotting down his notes, stepping into the energy field and vanishing once more in a flash of light. Moments later, the bulkhead door opened once more. This time, Carson stepped in. "False alarm, Grady. Return to your office," he said. Grady sighed heavily and walked from the room. Carson walked towards the brigadier, whose eyebrow had yet to return from halfway up his forehead. "Every time one of our boys gets within the energy field, they vanish and re-enter the room as though they've never stepped inside it before. All their notes gone, their memory wiped of any time spent inside. Like some sort of master reset." "I see." Stewart paused, staring at the console as its lights blinked away. We've just received word from the ISA. They've discovered a console of the same design in Bengal, and Torchwood are sending agents to investigate a similar discovery in the subway tunnels under New York, Carson reported. More reports are coming in. Whatever these things are, they're popping up all over the world, and the weather patterns over each are more aggressive the closer you get. To keep prying eyes away, Stewart pondered. What do you suggest, sir? Carson looked to the Brigadier as he finally turned away from the console and looked him straight in the eye. Call him in. The TARDIS hummed quietly as it cascaded through the vortex, clocks spinning in various directions and torches flaring up in the dimly lit room, while the Doctor rotated his way around the console, flicking various switches he couldn't remember the purpose of and pressing buttons to keep his hands busy. As he stepped around the side of the controls, his eyes glanced around the large empty room. For a brief moment, he remembered the days when the room had been filled with friends and companions, all chatting and laughing away. A smile flickered at the corner of his mouth, quickly fading as the console hummed a low, long hum. What was that? He asked, and the hum repeated. No, all sorted. Japan's all back to normal now. The console flickered and whistled. Oh, the usual. Three-eyed lizard men in the subway tunnels, assembling some sort of sonic weapon to rule the world. You know the routine. There was a soft beep. Exactly, just reverse the polarity. And among other things, I think I may have just invented butterscotch tart. He paused for a moment, resting his hands against the console and staring around the room. The TARDIS hummed again. No, it's not you, it's nothing. In an instant, the silence was broken, and the high-pitched ringing of the telephone filled the room. The Doctor looked up from his brief moment of longing and scratched his head. Now who could be ringing at this hour? He wondered aloud as he wandered across the room to the door. If it's one of those salespeople again, I'm going to have to do something about it. It's getting a little absurd. I mean, how can they expect me to prevent star systems from falling into a collapsing neutron star while they're pestering me to install double glazing? He swung open the door and reached his arm round the side to the phone panel, bringing the receiver to his ear. Hello, you're through to TARDIS Planetary Servicing, the Doctor speaking. Which department do you require? He smiled quietly to himself, and then stopped on the spot. I'm sorry, who did you say? The Doctor walked slowly back towards the console, the line stretching impossibly far behind him back to the door. Well, that's not entirely possible. What year are you calling from? He paused briefly. No, the year, dear. What year? He glanced at his watch and walked back to the door. I see. Tell him I'll be in his office 5 minutes ago. He went to put the receiver down and then brought it back. Well, what's he doing in Norway? He doesn't have an office in Norway. All right, send me the space-time coordinates and I'll be right with you. The receiver shook heavily under the weight bearing down on the Doctor's shoulders as he took a long, deep breath. He walked slowly down the gangway to the console and started slowly flicking switches and turning dials before coming to a pause and resting both his hands on the console. The TARDIS seemed to hum quietly to him, and he looked away from the console, as one does when hiding feelings in the company of dear friends. But the humming persisted. That was Unit, he explained slowly, on behalf of Brigadier Lethbridge-Stewart. The TARDIS beeped several times and whirred steadily. Yes, I know. Can't even remember how many years ago it was I got the news that he'd... Well, you know. He ran both his hands backwards through his thin, curled hair and scratched his scalp. I've always made it a rule never to go back to someone after... But this sounds important, and I can't just ignore it. It could be serious. The console hummed again. I know, but he was always a very dear friend. One of the few people I knew I could always rely on, no matter the circumstance. Can I really turn a blind eye when he needs me? This time, the console made no sound. But the Doctor's expression changed slowly, and a smile crept its way up his face. He straightened his collar and gripped the command lever, pushing it all the way up and holding on tight as the room shook heavily, the central tower heaving up and down as the engines groaned, and time itself soared around him.